Hello, my name is Megan Poon, and I am the moderator for today's presentation, Family Recovery Coaching. I want to welcome everyone to the Opioid and Other Drugs virtual series, provided by St. Clair County Community Mental Health in partnership with the Community Services Coordinating Body. This webinar series is made possible by a grant awarded by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. We are excited to provide this virtual series during the month of September, which is National Recovery Month. I want to share a few tips and housekeeping items to ensure an engaging and interactive session today. Today's session is being recorded. Also, we want to encourage you to enter any questions and comments you have at any time throughout this webinar using the chat feature found at the bottom of your screen. If time allows, we will do our best to answer as many questions as we can at the end of this presentation. We hope that this chat box will serve as an interactive space to share different strategies and ideas and resources related to our topic today. Continuing education credits are offered today for individuals that have registered for CEs at registration. This session is offered on Facebook Live. CEs are not eligible for Facebook Live or any recordings. Please make sure when you sign into the series, you use your full first and last name. If you need to change your name, you will need to log out of this webinar, click the webinar link again, and you will be prompted to enter your name and email. You must be logged on for the entire duration of the presentation. Participants who are not logged on for the duration will not qualify for CEs. If you find yourself losing connectivity, just log back in. CEs will only be provided to those who complete a short quiz and survey after this webinar. These materials were included in your registration email and must be completed within 7 days. This series will have an in and out code that participants will need in order to complete the quiz. Today's in code is family. We would like to welcome back Phil Pavona to our series. Phil comes to us from Okemos, Michigan, retired from Lansing Sparrow Hospital in 2011 as the Director of Pulmonary Services. With over 35 years in the health system, Phil thought that he could easily navigate the system to help his son's heroin addiction. Although Phil had many connections, he surprisingly found a system and community fractured, disjointed, many times apathetic, and at all times ill-prepared to care for a family dealing with opioid addiction. Speaking from a family perspective, he encapsulates the essence of what is needed in recovery programs. Phil is also an active trained family recovery coach. Before I turn things over to Phil, we are going to do a quick poll just to see how many of our participants today attended his Horror to Hope presentation earlier this month. Please submit your response as we turn the presentation over to Phil. Thanks.
Okay, again, I'm Phil, and I'm honored to be here once again with you. And it looks like half of the folks who are on today were also on last week. And that just gives me a good idea of if I say something that kind of refers back to last week, I can kind of tie it in. Today, we're talking about family recovery coaching. And I guess the first thing for those that do not know me, I'm a dad in Okemos raising 5 kids. Our second child down the line, Eric, pretty smart kid, went away to school. He was in college for 2 years on a scholarship. was an honor student while he was away at school. As a young kid, he did normal things, sports, WWF, Disney movies, whatever, and really didn't do drugs or drink. And in the summer between his second and third year of college, he met the wrong people, partied with the wrong drug, happened to be pills, and ultimately from that became a heroin addict. And we believe he was an addict for about 10 months before we even knew that that was the case. He was not home, so we didn't have access to him. And unbeknownst to us, he had utilized his college money for drugs for him and his girlfriend. We thought that that money would come back to mom and dad, obviously, if anything happened with dropping classes, but that is not the case. It goes to the kid. And so that began our nightmare. And for those of you who were with us last week, you know this, but our son died at the age of 25 after struggling with his addiction for about 3 years to a fentanyl overdose. We believe it was a fentanyl overdose in that the amount of opiates in his system was fairly therapeutic. But the drug paraphernalia found with him at the time kind of gave us an idea that that was an overdose. And then they weren't testing for fentanyl back in 2011 when he was 25 years old. And so we believe it was a fentanyl overdose at that time. What brings me to the name of this series, which is kind of From Horror to Hope, is the idea that as a family, we went through a pretty crummy thing. And when you're faced with a decision of what to do with a crummy thing, you really have only two choices: have some good come out of it or have some bad come out of it. And so we chose to have some good come out of it. And that is why it is that I do what I do today. And as far as family recovery coaching, that was something I began to do even before it was called that, probably back in 2014 and 15. Families Against Narcotics has taken this model or whatever and really made it into a program that can be utilized all over the state with a wide variety of people. And I feel it's a very important feature. I'm going to have them put up the first slide, which kind of explains what a family recovery coach is and what the mission is. Okay. And I'm not, as the slides are here, I want you to realize this is available to you guys. You can ask them and they'll send you the whole PowerPoint slide. So you really don't have to take a lot of notes. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to read these, but I am going to try to fill in the gaps based on some of the stuff that's put up there. But the most important thing is this. As a family member who went through this, I felt that we were not allowed to be engaged in his care in any way, shape, or form. And if we really truly believe that substance abuse disorder, heroin addiction, is a disease, then therefore we need to begin to treat it like a disease and not just give it lip service. And what that means is you would do all the things that you would do if it were cancer or heart disease or a wide variety of other things. And I'm here to tell you the family is engaged in every bit of that care. If they had a 22-year-old son with cancer, they wouldn't be shut out. They would know exactly what's going on, what the game plan is, what the choices are moving forward. It only seems to be with mental health and substance abuse that HIPAA becomes an item of concern. And as I said last week, and I'll say it again because it's really important to me, never allow HIPAA to allow anyone to provide substandard care, and never allow HIPAA to allow an addict or a mental health person to hide their problem. Because if they hide their problem, which is natural for an addict, no one can help them, okay? And so do not be an enabling force based on what HIPAA is. And we can get into that later on. Okay, so again, these PowerPoints will be available to anyone afterwards. You just need to ask for them and they'll ship it to you. Other than the one, it'll be the same ones on the screen. I feel it's also very important for families to be involved is because let's face it, the son or daughter could have the greatest therapist in the world, even be in a great court system, but the likelihood of people having them for more than an hour a week is really low. But who does have them for 160 or 170 hours a week? Well, it's where they live, mom and dad, brothers and sisters. And doesn't it make sense then to actually kind of get to the point where you spend as much time as possible with family whenever it's offered, to be able to provide them the tools to be able to love the dickens out of their kid, yet not enable them. That's essentially what it is that you would like them to be able to do. Also helping them know how to navigate a system that's pretty crummy and pretty hard. Doesn't mean good people aren't in the system. It's the system that's broke. And then thirdly, offering that kind of support. Just like someone who struggles with SUD, the family also needs peer recovery support from other family members, from moms, dads, that type of thing. And one of the things I'm going to mention at the very end has to do with children, because you need to remember many of these folks that are involved with substance use disorder either have kids themselves or have little brothers and sisters. And it is a hellish thing for those people to go through. And there's some, things to kind of talk about with that as well. But anyway, this tells you what it is that a family recovery coach is. Okay, and I'm going to have you go down to the next slide. And this next slide is really kind of what our mission is. Okay, and again, I don't need to reel it to you, but we really do want to help. We want to heal, and we want to provide hope to families that are impacted by addiction. And we want to do this in a manner that is consistent with us giving as much information as possible with respect to the families that we're dealing with. Let's go to the next slide. One of the things that I would say to you, and I would also say this about a peer recovery coach, okay? What are you getting with a peer recovery coach, and what are you getting with a family peer recovery coach? What you're getting is someone who's trained. There's nothing wrong with sponsors. When I work with families and I work with people who struggle, I tell them, look, we want to get you a therapist, a doc, a sponsor, whatever it is. But the difference between a sponsor and someone just providing some information, is pretty huge between the two with a recovery coach. First of all, recovery coaches, whether it's family or peer, have gone through training. Okay, it's not just somebody you meet at a 12-step meeting. Okay, you have no idea of that person's background and what it is that they've had to do to try to prepare themselves in helping both clients and families. And so the folks that are part of our program at Families Against Narcotics receive training. They're CCAR trained, okay? And there's additional training that can go beyond that with orientation. When I first took these classes moons ago, I also took a class where every day it was on a different drug. So day one was on marijuana, day two was on opiates, day three was on heroin, day four was on crack cocaine. I wanted to learn as much as I could about the substances that are out there so that I could feel pretty confident in knowing the difference between the two and knowing kind of how to navigate a system involved with that. And so here are the things that are part of the background training. And so not only will you get someone that's trained, okay, you'll get someone who is also a part of that system. In other words, in order to be a family recovery coach, you have to be a family person who's had to deal with and live with someone in the family having a substance abuse disorder. Just like to be a regular recovery coach for an SUD person, you have to be someone that's in long-term recovery. You need to have the credibility to look the person eye to eye to be able to not only empathize and sympathize with them, but you'll realize that everything that they're feeling, everything that they're experiencing, you have experienced as well. And therefore, you do have a plethora of information. Next slide, please. So how do you access a family recovery coach? Well, we're all darn lucky in Michigan because, as I said before, we have an organization called Families Against Narcotics that has this available free of charge to any of the families that are here in Michigan, although I've also had a couple of families outside of Michigan. But nonetheless, we have this and we offer this free of charge. So the easiest way to access it is to simply go on the Families Against Narcotics website, and where you see services, click on that and you'll see family recovery coaching. There is a thing that you can fill in where our organization, main organization, will receive that, contact you, and then go ahead and assign you a family recovery coach, okay? And so it's very, very easy to access. Now, if you're in an area where there isn't a FAN chapter and or there aren't family recovery coaches, doesn't matter. Again, I have many families who are outside of the Lansing area simply because they live in an area where this isn't offered. And it can easily be done for them, okay? And again, it is free of charge. And we hear from our families all the time that they absolutely love what it is that's going on, okay? So once you've accessed a family recovery coach, what we all do as the person who's going to help the family member is we go ahead and get the family's permission, okay, followed by an intake form. Now, each of us do our program a little bit differently, so I'll be explaining in particular kind of how I do the program. And I think most of the time, all of us kind of do the program in following the same format. I may do the program a little bit differently in that in the beginning stages of the care that I provided, I often worked with those clients who were also suffering with addiction. And how I was accessed originally, and I still get access today, is I'll get a call from the jail. I'll get a call from a probation officer. I'll get a call from a judge. I'll get a call from our local police. I'll get a call from therapists that are in the community, and the person will say, your name and number was given to me in that they said you would be able to provide help for our son or daughter and for us. Is that something you can do? And I always say yes. I'll do everything in my power to help the folks. And so part of my intake also includes the SUD person, okay? And I don't feel that I can direct the parents and the rest of the family in a manner that's consistent with knowing where to start when and how to move forward if I also don't have an idea of the child's history and kind of what's going on with that. And again, FAN has a wide variety of things that I can then turn people over to. Recovery coaches, our Hope Not Handcuffs program, and getting treatment. There's a gazillion different things that we offer kind of as a package, okay? But nonetheless, I often see people in jail. I often see them in the ER post overdose, and I begin the process right there. And I feel it's important for me to do that because most of the families that I meet have no idea of what it takes and what is involved in having a proper care plan for their own son and daughter. They feel like they've done the right thing. They sent them off to detox and rehab. But when you ask them, oh, give me a little history of that. Where was it at? How long was it? I hear over and over and over again, well, my son's gone to rehab 5 times. He was at such and such place or such and such place for, 14 days, for 18 days, for 10 days, for 21 days. And I generally shake my head and I say, look, if your son's a crystal meth addict or your son's a heroin addict, that's barely detox, okay? And it doesn't matter where you sent them. If they only have them for that amount of time, the likelihood of them having success and being able to forge forward and have the motivation factor and everything else that's necessary to work the plan is really pretty nil. And so I try to spend as much time in the beginning stages letting families know what a good program would look like for their son and daughter. I'm not going to be that person's therapist. I'm not going to be that person's recovery coach. We have other people to do that. But I think the family needs to know what that looks like, okay? And so that's part of what I do in the beginning stages. And so we kind of go from there to say, okay, well, how familiar are our families with addiction? Do they understand addiction? Do they understand brain chemistry? Do they understand the question, why can't my kid just stop? Okay, he's had plenty of opportunities. He's been an addict for 6 or 7 years. I don't get it. He sees the harm it's doing him and other people around him. Why can he not just stop? And so we begin the materials in trying to help them understand that process. Not so that they'll feel sorry for their kid, not so that they'll enable their kid, but again, so that they have an understanding of why maybe what's occurred so far has not worked for them, okay? And additionally, you need to realize that often the rest of the family is at a point in the process where they need to better understand addiction so that they don't wipe their hands from their brother, kind of wash their hands from their brother, whatever it happens to be. One of the families I'm working with right now, when I work with them, mom is there, dad is there, older brother and sister-in-law are there, best friend are there, and the person's fiance are there. That's family recovery coaching. It can be that involved, okay, because it is a family disease. And so what I often do, and again, FAN has a lot of things available for this, I send them a couple of videos right off the bat. And if you're familiar with the Nugget video, it's an excellent video in that it really does answer the question of how quickly someone can get involved in substance abuse or in the beginning stages, all you feel is good, and the landing that you have takes you right back to normal. But within a very short amount of time, the good is no longer a high flight in this bird case. And secondly, the landing is a terrible landing where they can barely get up and walk if they land at all. And so it begins to the parents begin to understand kind of that process. And then I follow up with a brain chemistry tutorial that's provided, and both of these are on YouTube. You can go on the internet. And if you're not familiar with Dr. Corey Waller, when I met Corey, he was one of the mentors that I asked a lot of questions from, based on the fact that when I was doing presentations, he was also doing presentations. And he was the addiction physician president for the Addiction Society in Michigan at that time. And he's an excellent, excellent physician who deals with addiction medicine. And so you can go on the internet and type up Dr. Corey Waller, and a lot of his tutorial educational series will be on there. The one that I use really does a great job of answering that question, why can't my kid just stop? It talks about brain chemistry, it talks about dopamine, it talks about motivating factors, a wide variety of things. Next slide, please. Now, another tool that we use at Families Against Narcotics, which I think the families and we find very helpful, is we have a self-sufficiency matrix, okay? And we provide this matrix to them in the very beginning of the stage, okay? We're gonna be providing this at the end of our process, working with them as well. The whole idea is for them to take a self-assessment as to where it is that they are. You know, addiction education, where's their knowledge? No knowledge, some knowledge, have a really good knowledge base. How is it affecting their employment? Not their son or daughter's employment, theirs. Because as a dad who went through this and meeting family who goes through this, it can affect your own employment. The idea of having to get your kid to court, the idea of the phone ringing all the time, the idea of having to try to access places during the day when you're at work, it's really a mess to do. And it can cause you not only the worry and anxiety, but the idea of being away from work, having your mind someplace else while you're at work, can really affect your job. Financially, I've met parents who have spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on their kids' substance abuse disorder problem. And it's really not necessary. And I'll get into that later. But, you know, they've broken into their 401k, they've taken a second mortgage on the house, they've gone through every bit of savings and other things about financial. Their kids have stolen from them. I mean, we need to help our families see where they're at and move them to a point where we try to get them to a 3. That's the whole idea when we work with this self-sufficiency matrix, to try to get them further up the scale in their knowledge and their support and their safety features. Physical health, you know, mental health, those are all part of the process as well. Next slide, please. Safety. Again, for many people, safety is a huge issue. Family relations, that's a huge issue. Often, I've got a current client right now where the dad wants nothing to do with his own son. So it's the mom and a brother kind of going through this process with me. In the dad's mind, their son is dead to him. He even said that. I don't want his name spoken. I mean, it's almost kind of like the Old Testament. I don't want his name spoken. You know, Moses, erases, you know, name from all the books. And again, I think it's a defensive mechanism on his part. I certainly understand the idea of being lied to over and over again, being stolen from, all that stuff, to where you get to a point where you want to wash your hands of the process. But nonetheless, I think we can do better with all of our families in providing them the kind of tools that they need to not give up hope and to be safe, secure themselves, regardless of where their son or daughter is in their process. Next slide, please. Okay, we have another tool that we utilize, and it's really kind of the idea of helping versus enabling behavior. Again, it's a self-sufficiency matrix that we use. And again, this will be available to you. And I'm going to leave it up on the, on the screen right now so you can just kind of read this a little bit going through there. But again, the idea is to try to work with them, provide scenarios for them. And when I do this tool, I say, let's go back to a year ago and let's go back to where you are now, because many of these folks have been dealing with their substance use disorder loved one for a long time. They're not just 3 or 4 or 6 months into it. They may be in their 5th year. And they've learned some things over that time. And they'll tell you it was the worst way to learn it because it was always on experience and it wasn't a good experience. So what we want to be able to do is to find out where they were, where they are at now, and hopefully they can learn from us so that they don't have to make the same mistakes some of us, like me, did in those beginning stages when I had no one to help us try to navigate the system. Next slide, please. Here are the questions that we go over and what we ask. Do you take steps to cover up the addiction and help to keep it hidden? Many family members do that. They're embarrassed. They don't want to ruin their kid's reputation. Their kid may already be in the court system and therefore they don't want to pile on. I mean, there's a wide variety of reasons to do this. And one of the things I want to say, when we work with the individual family and their circumstances, There are times, just because these 12 things are listed does not mean every one of these every time is enabling. There may be times where doing this is actually supportive under one circumstance, and doing the same thing could be enabling under a different circumstance. It matters where the kid's at, where the process is, as to whether or not that's something to take into consideration. So when we talk about these 1 through 12, we go through different examples, both ones that they've lived through, and more importantly, some they may have not lived through yet. Because when you're dealing with addiction, you have no idea of what questions to ask and what might be following you around the corner. Because again, until you experience it, you often don't even know anything about it. Do you make excuses for your loved one's addiction or behavior? Do you avoid confronting the addict in an attempt to avoid conflict? A huge one with family members. They just don't want the arguments to occur. They feel like they have to walk around on eggshells. But nonetheless, if they don't get to the issue, okay, then it'll never be processed and never be taken care of. Do you believe your loved one is just going through a phase? You know, I get asked by people when I do presentations all the time, how do I know if my kid is experimenting? I'm talking about kids that are drinking too much or maybe smoking dope, okay? Obviously, when they get to heroin or meth, which is the majority of the kids I work with, we know there's a problem. But again, like anything else, the earlier you can nip something in the butt and deal with it, the likelihood of having success is there. And so I get asked all the time, how do I know if my kid has a problem? And I say, well, look, there's 4 features in the life process. For your kid, it's either school or work. That's one. Health is the second one. Okay. Relationships are a third one. And the court and law are the fourth one. What I say to their family is this: if your kid has an issue in one of those, not all 4, in one of those, you have a problem. So let's even take drinking. If your kid got a DUI, you got a problem with his drinking, even if he's not an alcoholic, because a responsible person will not get in a car and put themselves and other people at risk. Okay. So same thing with smoking dope if they get pulled over and they're high. Okay. Obviously, if it's affecting their health, but for many of them, it really hasn't affected their health yet. Well, a third one is school or work. If their grades are going down, if they're skipping class, if they're not showing up to work, if they can't keep a job, you all got a problem, okay? And you need to deal with it now until you allow it to get to the point where I often meet people when their addiction is much worse with a worse substance. And the last issue is relationships. If you and your son or daughter are arguing about who they're with and if they're getting high or drunk or whatever it is, you got a problem. Because again, people who are responsible that often use substances that are legal do not get themselves into that kind of problem. Do you handle the responsibilities of your loved one? Often families do that in the beginning stages. But again, we try to help them begin to understand that, you know, the pain of their addiction has to be such that there are consequences that they face. If it's easy for them not facing consequences, then the likelihood of them changing their behavior is going to be pretty poor. Remember, people only change for 2 reasons. They're forced to, and they want to. And often people who are really sick with substance abuse, it does sometimes take the nudge of a force to get them into treatment to the point where maybe they get clean long enough to where they can begin to reason and see there is a different path for me that is much better. But nonetheless, that's what we try to help them with. Have you handled the responsibilities of your loved one, paid their bills, paid their rent, whatever it happens to be, do paperwork for them? Have you bailed your loved one out of jail? Most parents will say yes the first time. Hopefully they begin to realize that that's the wrong thing to do. Jail is a good time out. It gives you time to be able to put a plan together, which also gives you the opportunity to hold something over their head, i.e., we'll help you get out of jail, providing you go into treatment. And treatment means you don't leave treatment until they say you're ready, not when you think you are ready. Have you paid the bills? Do you have a parent-child relationship with your loved one, even though they're a spouse? We often help occasionally where it's a spouse versus a son or daughter. Do you enjoy the feeling of being needed by your loved one? All parents to some extent do. But again, we need to get to the point where we realize at that age, we don't want to parent them. We want to coach them. Okay. That's what we need to be, a coach, not a parent anymore. They're not 8 years old anymore. Are you guilty of giving second, third, and fourth chances? Again, it depends on what the circumstances are. If your kid is still struggling, not going into treatment, being disrespectful, doing all the things that people who are at the height of their addiction are doing, no, don't give them the second, third, fourth, or fifth chance. But if they turn the corner and are willing to get treatment and are willing to do certain things, willing to drop and do blows, willing to go into IOP following treatment, willing to go into sober living, are beginning to do all of those things that you see are part of someone healing and getting well, then yeah, give them a second and third chance because they deserve it. They're doing the right thing. But if they're not, you need to step back and don't give them the chance first. Okay, like the Bible says, by your fruit you will know them. You can't go by what they say. You've got to go by what they do. And therefore, if they say, well, I'm going to go into treatment if you let me to come home for a couple of days and we find a treatment place. No, we'll help you find a treatment place. And you can take your shower and get your meal at the treatment place. We'll talk about, transitioning where you're going to come back based on how you do in treatment and what your behavior is at that time. And then, do you ever participate in risky behaviors alongside your loved ones? I hate to tell you this, but I've had a couple of clients where when I go into jail and meet with them, and I do a history and I say, tell me the first time you ever got drunk or high. They'll say something like, well, at my 60th birthday, my dad took me out and got me high. And I say, I'm really sorry that happened. That is a terrible way for your dad to have shared, this monumental age of being 16 years old. There were much better ways to do that, okay? And so again, that the other case is, when I look to transition kids back into the community, there are some families that I would not transition them back to, not because the parents don't want them, but because the parents are part of the issue, abusive behavior, drugs in the home, alcohol in the home, whatever it happens to be. So anyway, this is a format, once again, where we'll spend a lot of time with the family, give them examples of different scenarios, have them tell us what their scenario is and work it through. Allow them to take a lot of notes so that they can be better prepared if and when they have to deal with this again in the future. Next slide, please. That's really kind of going through the whole process, explaining enabling a little bit better. And again, we need to be assertive. We need to set boundaries because those are all the tools of allowing the person to get the idea that everyone's on the same page. And that's why I say to the family, my toughest families are those families where mom and dad are not on the same page. Mom and dad may not be married anymore. Mom and dad are not living together anymore. And if the substance abuser can find the person in the family matrix that will allow them to stay there with nothing asked of them, will feed them, put a roof over their head, give them money, look, the likelihood of them changing their behavior and seeking out help is going to be really, really poor. So once again, we try to do our best to work with as many family members as possible. Next slide, please. Okay. We also have a program, and we utilize it in this, but we actually have a program that's new to FAN. We have it in our area, and there's several other areas, and it's also available on the FAN website from one of our chapters that will provide it for anyone that accesses that web page. But it's actually a 12-step program for the families. Just like that person who seeks recovery for substance abuse has 12 steps, we as families have 12 steps as well, okay? And here are our 12 steps. And I think these are very good, very important steps. And I want to give Jackie a lot of credit for the program that we do with respect to our Stronger Together 12-step program. You can see her name at the very bottom of the slide. But she is someone that worked tirelessly with us over this last year on this. We gave her a lot of input as we could, but she really took the ball and ran with it. And it's kind of her baby. So when you look at these 12 steps and you say to yourself, well, okay, step one, I admit my child is abusing drugs or alcohol. I'll tell you what, it sometimes takes a lot for a mom to say, I have a son who's a heroin addict. They pussyfoot around that because it sounds so terrible. But, and again, neighbors don't need to know what's going on, but the people that are part of the system to help that person, the courts, family, therapist, peer recovery coach, sponsor, whatever it happens to be, all those folks need to be on the same page. And all of us have to admit, this guy's got a problem with drugs or alcohol, okay? Once you finally admit the fact of how serious your problem is, then you immediately go into step two, which is you do grieve, okay? You don't grieve maybe the way I do in having lost a son, but while we were going through this process, I had a lot of grief going on. I grieved what he was doing to himself. We all, as parents, have our ambitions and our own ideas of what we would like our kids to accomplish. We want them to be happy, healthy, productive, and independent. When you're a heroin addict, you are none of those things. And as a parent, you grieve it, okay? And it really does hurt. And so we try to realize and tell them that, yes, it is expected that you will grieve some of this, but we have some tools to help you get past that and be a positive influence, not only in your own life and your family's life, but in your one that struggles as well. Number 3, oh, incidentally, going back to number 1, some of the things I'll try to put a tidbit to each of them. With number 1, the idea is this. Look, you do not want to ever go back into denial. Once you've kind of admitted the fact that you have a kid who is an addict, don't go back in denial. They may be in recovery, but your son or daughter is an addict for the rest of their life, just like someone who is an alcoholic is. Doesn't mean they can't be in recovery for the rest of their life, but they need to treat their addiction, and you all need to treat your addiction the same way that you would when it comes to diabetes or anything else. Okay, I can't see my screen anymore, and so I'm hoping Megan or someone can kind of put that slide back up. And I'm going to go on talking while they kind of do that. The second one we talked about, and again, I said this one follows step 1, in that once you know your son's an addict, you're going to go right into the idea of having that loss. Number 3 is, I release the burden of guilt by refusing to accept responsibility for my child's decision. All of our parents have guilt, okay? As a dad, one of the things that was hardest for me was thinking to myself, what a crummy dad I must be to have a son who got involved in heroin addiction. As a dad, I'm supposed to do everything in my power to make sure such an evil never enters our home, okay? And it was hard. For moms and dads, it's really hard because we feel sometimes how we failed it. But the truth is this. We have a responsibility to be the very best parents we can be. We do not have a responsibility to raise the greatest kid that we can raise, okay? And I'm going to say that again. We have a responsibility to be the best, thank you. We have a responsibility to be the best parent we can be. We do not have the responsibility of raising the greatest kid. There are too many outside influences on that, including the kid himself, okay? And parents need to hear that because they do beat themselves up. Number 4, I recognize my worry is ineffective in controlling my child's actions. This is a huge deal. No matter what we would want to say to them, they are going to worry. That's just part of the process. But I think we can help them in that worry process get through another process. Here's where we use the serenity prayer. Just like those 12 steps that are for the person who struggles with substance abuse, they have a serenity prayer that they use. That same prayer is utilized for us in our step 4. The other thing that we utilize in our step 4 is we help families realize that there is a way to get a hold of that worry so that it can be not eat up your whole day every day. So for instance, one of our tricks would be this. Look, why don't you set aside a time on Wednesday evening and Saturday evening at 7 o'clock at night to where what you're going to do is that's the time that you're going to worry about your kid, plan about your kid, talk about your kid, go through the whole process. If you're good at that, you can tell your own brain that that's going to happen, okay? And worry is kind of a brain disorder as well, okay? And so if you can tell your brain, look, leave me alone right now, I need to work, but I'm going to worry about that on Wednesday night. And you put it on your own mental health recovery calendar. Parents should have a recovery calendar as well. Therefore, you'll be able to access that and use that and hopefully set that aside for a better effective time. I refuse to support my child's destructive behavior and allow my child to experience those natural conditions. And again, we talked about this a little bit before. The pain and hassle of their addiction has to outweigh the perceived pleasure that their addiction is causing. And the only way to have that occur is for them to begin to feel some of the natural consequences of their decisions, okay? And one of the things I say to parents is, it's kind of the adage of how do you know if you're supporting or enabling? If it's good for their sobriety, do it. It's supporting. If it allows their ineffective, bad behavior, drug using, drinking to continue, if you were to do something then, it's really going to be enabling. Okay, and so that's kind of the difference. So if they're willing to do the right thing, and are making steps in doing the right thing, and by their actions you recognize it, not just in the words, but by words they're also being respectful to you because you have every right to have that, then begin to pull that support in more and more and more, okay? Because we want them to think that when they do the right thing, it's an open door policy, hassle-free. When they're doing the wrong thing and continuing to go down the path of drug using, we want them to have to jump a fence, swim through shark-infested waters, and dodge bullets to do the wrong thing. Hassle-full in doing the wrong thing, hassle-free in doing the right thing. I acknowledge the negative impact my child is having on my family and take necessary steps to resolve and restore peace in my home. This is a huge thing because it's not just about your substance abuser. It's about you and your husband and your other siblings and grandpa and grandma and everyone else. And it is a family disease. So you have to take steps to make sure you have peace in your home. And this is the deal. You know what? As we work on and help them develop those strategies, this is something that they really do not have to, in any way, shape, or form, have to explain that or defend it. That's a right that they have. They shouldn't even have to get into it with their substance abusing child based on the decisions that they're making for their own home. They have a right for that, and they shouldn't have to defend it or ever make excuses for it. I acknowledge the negative impact my child is having on my family. Okay, we just talked about that one. I develop coping strategies. They will not be able to help their son or their daughter or their loved one unless they are physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually healthy. If they're burning themselves out and they're not sleeping and they're worrying themselves to death, okay, the likelihood of them having the energy to do anything and helping anyone in their family, let alone their substance abuser, is going to be really nil. So we help them provide strategies to do the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Next slide, please. Number 8 is, and she'll get it on the screen here in just a second, is identify ways in which good can emerge from my circumstances. Okay, I'm going to say it again since it's not on the screen yet, although I think she's going to get it on the screen here in 1 second. Identify ways in which good can emerge from my circumstances. Okay, there we are. Okay, look, you've got 2 decisions. Okay, no matter what the circumstance is, you're going to make something good out of it or you're going to make something bad out of it. And doing nothing is actually making something bad out of it. So that's not even a choice. Okay, and so are you going to make lemonade out of lemons, or are you going to allow it to continue to eat up your whole life and the people around you's life as well, regardless of where the kid is in the circumstances? I'll use myself as an example for this. We were faced with a decision when our son died. We could wallow in our grief for the rest of our lives, and time would help, but nonetheless, we would kind of be feeling, what happened and why did this happen? Because you do a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking. Or you can get to the stage where you say, you know what? It sucks that I had to bury a kid. But you know what? I'm not interested in any other family having to bury a kid. What can we do in our family's name and in our child's name to try to help other families navigate a system that's really, really crummy? And so that was our decision, to try to help other people, okay? And so you're going to have to make a decision. My advice is make a positive decision, okay? Number 9, I forgive the hurt my child is causing me and remain open to future reconciliation. Look, you do this not because of who your child is. You do this because of who you are, okay? Regardless of what it is that your child is doing and saying and where they are in your recovery, you need to remain open and you need to reconcile and forgive your child, because if you don't, it will eat you up. It will eat you alive. That's just a healthy thing to do, regardless of whether it was substance abuse or not. And 10 kind of goes along the same way. I make a conscious decision to love my child unconditionally, always treating them with dignity and respect. Difficult to do when they're not doing it in return. And again, you do this not because they're deserving of it. You do it because it's the right thing to do. Number 11, I relinquish the hold my child has, and I acknowledge that my responsibility for parenting is done. And that is a huge, huge deal. Look, you want to love them and you want to coach them, but when they're 25 years old or 19 years old or 33 years old, you can't kid them, okay? It will not work. And so think of yourself as being a coach of anything in life. That's the kind of attitude that you want to have. And you want to create the team around you where everyone's a coach, the therapist, the doctor, the recovery coach, the family recovery coach, mom and dad, older brother, whatever it happens to be. All of us want to be coaches for that person. And then number 12 is I find hope by focusing on my future and living a life of purpose. Look, I've met parents whose kids have been struggling with substance abuse for 20 years. They're now 40 years old or 45 years old. It is hell on those parents. They need to get to the point where, yes, they can have a future and a life of purpose. And we help them develop all of that process because, again, they're deserving of it. And so we say to them, look, never give up, but go on. You can't stay exactly where it is, where you are right now, because it won't be healthy for you. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, just like when a therapist is working with someone that has a substance abuse problem, we have the same stages of change as parents and as other family members, okay? We have this pre-contemplation area to where we say to ourselves, you know, I'm stuck, what is it that we do, okay? Then we get into contemplation. I need to change. I need to do certain things. I need to reach out to people. We need to find an avenue for that. And then once we've come to that decision, we go through a preparation plan and we develop a plan. And then once we get the plan developed, we put our plan into action, which again is what we're trying to do with our recovery coaching that we do for families. And so once they're in the action plan, then we help them develop the tools to maintain that plan and enjoy life through the process. Again, no matter where their loved one is, they could be in recovery, they could be who knows where they're at, or they could be really, really struggling. But either way, we're looking to help that family and the other family members. Next slide, please. You guys will have this. What it does is it kind of takes each step and throws them. This is where our step 1 in the patient recovery plan is with respect to pre-contemplation. It goes through all of them. You can see steps 2 and 3 were contemplation, step 5, preparation. But again, you can have these slides if you want. Next slide, please. Okay, now this is something that I use. I don't know how many other recovery coaches use this, but I use this. And the reason I use it with the family, although I can tell you, I've got a family right now who their child is now in his 4th or 5th month of recovery. And he joined us for this session. And again, I tell parents all the time, there's nothing I'm going to be saying to you that I wouldn't share with your person who struggles, or vice versa. Because again, we've got to get on the same page and begin to talk in a manner to we're a team. But anyway, what I say to people is, look, you know, the 3 keys to success for someone who's struggling is going to be in the person's attitude, giving it enough time, and having a great transition recovery tool system. Okay, and so what does the attitude mean? Well, look, I can do everything in my power to lead someone to water, give them all the tools for that. If they don't drink it, they're not going to be able to get helped. Now, I encourage them and I provide a wide things around them, like recovery coaches for them that can look them in the eye and have credibility. But nonetheless, their attitude, if they don't have the right attitude, they're not going to give it enough time and they won't build a transition plan for their recovery. And so what else does that attitude look like? Look, having dealt with heroin addicts and meth addicts, to have them say that they're going to continue to smoke dope or drink, what I say to them is, look, you know, the likelihood of you having success with that, look, within a few weeks to a few months, you're going to be right back at using heroin in the upper 90th percentile. The likelihood of you being able to have that under control and not lose everything under control again, those statistics are so poor, no one would want to take a chance on that for 50 cents, let alone your future, okay? The other idea of attitude is, you know, and often I meet kids who find Jesus in jail because they want to get out of jail. They're willing to say anything to me. And so I say, well, let me ask you. And I kind of go over some of the things that are in a plan and say, are you willing to do all these things? Because you just told me you're willing to do anything to get clean and to get out of jail. Well, this is what it involves. And I want you to ask as many questions of me as you can. Well, with family, I explain to them, here's what you need, okay? Your son, if your son has been sent somewhere for heroin addiction for 10 days, 5 times, forget it. We have to help you find a place for them where we can get them 60 to 90 days. And there are ways to do that. Commercial insurance sometimes a pain in the butt with that, but I've taken people off commercial insurance before to get them on a Healthy Michigan plan to be able to find that. But often I can find this out of state as well. And again, our Hope Not Handcuffs program is a wonderful program. We have people who work through that program looking to find the best options for recovery for them. As far as the transition, what does that involve? It involves the things we see in the support system: family, friends, recovery coach, peer meetings, sponsors, cognitive behavioral therapist, physician, the court personnel. You name them. You know what their phone number is. You know what their email contact is. You get everyone to sign release forms because, again, release forms are tantamount. If the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, you're not going to have any success. That family may be doing and saying the wrong thing at the dinner table unless someone is working with them. And so we have to get to the idea that this is a team thing, okay? And that all of us have to be part of that team. It involves no contact. It involves scrubbing phones. It involves changing the numbers, you know. It involves doing a separate trigger plan for individual roadblocks and individual things that the person with substance abuse finds as a trigger. We know they normally fall into people, places, things, and feelings. But what is the separate plan for that? That's why your son needs a therapist. That's why your son needs a cognitive behavioral therapist that works on relapse prevention. They will help them develop all of those tools. And if your son's never had a tool like this, no wonder he's still using heroin 5 years later. And he's never had sobriety for more than a few weeks. These are the things that are necessary. And parents often don't know that. We build in rewards. You know, 30, 60, 96 months and a year of sobriety are big deals. And so we say to the family, work with your son or daughter, and let's put these rewards right up front. This plan should not only have sticks, it should have carrots. And so let's all of us know when it's been 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, and 1 year. And let's celebrate it. I'll use one of the families I worked with as an example. At 30 days, the kid, I, and his older brother went to a little dive burger place here in town that everybody loves, that's dirt cheap, but has the greatest, greasiest, nastiest food, but tastes delicious anywhere, okay? It's called Nip and Sip. And so that was his reward. At 60 days, he and his brother and his dad went to a lug nut games. They planned it ahead of time. It was on his recovery calendar that when he attains his 60th day of sobriety, that's where they're going to go. At 90 days, they went to a Tiger game, okay? And they spent a lot of time in Detroit through that process. At 6 months, they went to their grandfather's cabin, okay? And they stayed there for the weekend, and they biked, and they hunted, and they fished, and they swam, and they had a great time. I hope you're getting the idea that these are family things that they're doing, okay? We're trying to reconnect that family. At 1 year, they bought their son a laptop computer because he'd gotten his GED in jail, and he was going to college for the first time. And I can tell you, this kid, his first 2 years at community college, he was an honor student. And so these are the things that we build in because they're no different than anyone else. They want attaboy rewards, okay? And they don't have to be anything that's of money, okay? The things that you enjoy. This, again, their son or daughter needs to have these in their recovery toolbox, and they have to be as easy to access as going to get drugs is. So I say to them, what's your favorite soft drink? Root beer? Okay, let's get a ton of root beer, but don't drink it. We're going to put it on a pedestal and have it available for you when you want to celebrate and or when you're struggling. What's your favorite book genre? What's your favorite movie genre? I had a kid who loved Game of Thrones, which incidentally, I loved Game of Thrones as well. Most people did. I had the family DVR them, and I said, don't watch them. When you're struggling, you put yourself in front of Game of Thrones, you will have 1 hour of not thinking about drugs because you love that show so much. That's what you have to do. You have to have a gazillion of those things available in a recovery toolbox for people to access for when they struggle. And you want them to have sensory involvement. So for instance, I'll say to a guy, do you like taking showers? Some people hate them, some people don't like them. I love hot showers. I'll go in there and use it until the water's gone, until the hot water's gone. Well, the next time you take a hot shower, I want you to have sensory involvement. Go into that hot shower and see what it, think about how it's feeling when it's hitting your head and your back. Think of how the soap smells when you're lathering it up. Think of the noise that you hear because addiction is a brain disease. If you can get your brain to play a different record and see a different book play out, okay, you can begin to change what it is that your brain is doing. And the best way to do that is through sensory. So I say, let's do your sensory to the max. When you're drinking that root beer that you saved, I want you to hear the clinkle of the ice. I want you to smell it. I want you to savor every drink of it so you have a picture in your mind of doing it. Those are easy, they're cheap, and you can do them really well. And then goals. Intermediate, short-term, and long-term goals. They got to have some goals. Everyone in life needs some goals. Obviously, the short-term, the immediate is we got to stay clean for X amount of time. The intermediate goal is how do you put things in place to eventually get that long-term goal? I ask the family, and if I'm working with a kid, if I could wave the magic wand, 5 years from now, where would you be? And they'll tell me. And they'll say, you know, people never ask me this. And I'll say, well, it's not going to fall into your lap. So in your intermediate goals, what are you going to be doing now to be able to put the things in place to ultimately work for your dad as an electrician? Do you know what it's involved? Do you know how you get to be an electrician? Do you know what training you need? Do you know all of that kind of stuff? If not, during the intermediate phase, we're putting things together for that so that you can realize that long-term goal. A sobriety calendar, it's visual. Okay, we have them use a sobriety calendar. Plus, it allows the family to realize that no longer are we going to accept excuses that you didn't know how to get a hold of so-and-so, or you forgot that you had a drop that day. Anything that you're doing in your life goes on that sobriety calendar. Meetings with your doctor, therapist, 12-step meetings, school, work. At the very end, the next morning we get up, you X out the day before, so you have this visual right in front of you that you've gone through one more day. And after a while, when you have 3, 4, 5 months of those sobriety calendars saved behind each other, you look and you say, wow, look at all those days of sobriety. And it has that rewards day. It tells you where 60 days are. So you can go, oh man, I got 6 days left and I'm at 90 days or whatever. And then the big one, accountability. What does the family want? And if the family wants to help them, there has to be accountability in any plan. Does that involve drops and blows? Does that involve phone? Look, nothing good happens after 11 o'clock. Just like they have a curfew at 11 o'clock, their damn phone needs to have a curfew at 11 o'clock, okay? And that allows parents to sleep if their kids are living with them with both ears closed and both eyes closed, because there ain't any shenanigans going on. So phone and computer and all that stuff, done at 11 o'clock, okay? Done. Okay, so, and then, you know, curfews or whatever. So that's for the parents to put into a plan and say to them, look, this is what your kid needs. I don't need to be the person doing this with you, but the people that you access, therapists, recovery coaches, all these other people can help put all of this together. You now know what it looks like, and you can be part of that plan instead of sitting back like me and feeling the only time anybody wanted to call me or talk to me was when they wanted my money or my insurance card. Next slide, please. Okay, so I want to end with some questions here, but if you want the resources and you want to know how to get a program like this, just go on familiesagainstnarcotics.org, okay? There's my name, my email, and my telephone number. Again, our moderators can get you all of these slides if you want them. There's nothing in there that's secret or whatever it happens to be. And I do want to open it up to any questions. So I'm hoping my moderator will come back on and let me know what it is that they would like to have answered as a question that they feel would be the best.
All right, Phil. One of the questions we have is, how can parents set healthy boundaries with teens who are vaping?
Well, once again, and I would get a hold of vaping, okay? You know, kids want and need different things today. You know, it used to be the old car keys, okay? And you could simply say, hey, you know, you're not doing anything until this happens and this happens and this happens with respect to getting a driver's license and driving. It's not as big a deal now for kids, but this is what I would suggest doing. And when I often work with kids, and again, there's nothing wrong with working with someone in the community, like a peer recovery coach, on a kid who's in the beginning dangers of going somewhere, okay? But I often ask kids when I do presentations in high schools, I say, look, what I want you to do is I don't want you to listen and believe me, or even your parents right now. So when you go on the computer and you look up the health and or dangers of a certain thing, whether it's smoking dope or vaping or whatever it is, don't look at the Family Research Council, but don't look at High Times either. Look at university studies and see what it is that they have to say. Because what I would like you to do, and often kids want to be treated like they're a little older than they are. They do want to be treated like an adults. And so what I ask them to do in stage one is, look, I want you to do some research, and I want you to tell me and anyone else why it is that you want to continue to do this. What is it that's positive for you in your life? Because you're going to find both positive and negative. I want you to weigh those out, but I also want you to learn about what it is that they're doing. Now, if all you simply want to do is to be cool or to get high or whatever it happens to be, at least now we know where it's at, okay? But I always try in step one to appeal to their idea of wanting to be mature and wanting to make good decisions for themselves. And I always say to them, look, you know, that's all your parents want. Your parents want what is best for you. And they're worried now because of a situation like this. They are not saying they don't want you to do this because they're just trying to be a pain in your ass. They realize the dangers that can occur from something like this. And you need to get a different hobby. I mean, if it's something that you're enjoying and it's spending time, let's try to figure out something that's different that we can have in your life with respect to making different choices. But it's a tough one. It is their home. They have every right to say that as long as you're living under our roof, you're going to follow our rules. My mom used to say that to me, and then she would say, and Phil, you know, one day when you get your own home, make your own rules. Because my dad was not a big one at explaining why he wanted something done. He just said, because I want it. And then I'd look at my mom and she would shrug her shoulders and she'd say, you know what, Phil, if you want it done differently in the future, one day you'll have your own home. You can do that differently with your kids. But right now, hey, we're doing what your dad says. It's as simple as that. And they didn't budge from it. And they took privileges away. You know what? A cell phone is a privilege. I'm sorry, parents, but if you're paying for your kid's cell phone, you have every right to say, look, you will do these things or you ain't going to have a cell phone. It's as simple as that. There are many things that we take for granted today that really are privileges.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for your time and information today.